Welcome, everybody, to the SmallTown Collectibles YouTube channel. I'm Jimmy Don Kerr. I try to come up with these really clever intros every week for my guests, and as I was doing my research, I came across their YouTube bio, and I thought, this is perfect. What could better explain this couple that I'm going to interview tonight? So I'm just going to read it to you. Hey, you found us. You asked for a Skeleton Key Comics channel, and so here we are, bringing you our incredible adventures and 2 cents, even if you didn't ask for it. We are Tony and Sammy, the dynamic duo of the comic world. Adventure with us as we travel, collect, go on family hunting trips, con hop, share how-tos, tips, and tricks, and work our virtual comic shop, plus so much more. I couldn't think of a better way to introduce these two, so everybody join me in welcoming to 10 Questions, Tony and Sammy from Skeleton Key Comics.
Thank you.
Hey,
Thanks for having us
thanks
on.
for having us.
No, I'm excited to talk to you guys. And we'll just get right into it, guys. The first question of every interview that I do is what or who got you into collecting? And so, Sammy, it's ladies first on the Small Town Collectibles YouTube channel, so you go first.
All right, so what got me into comics was definitely this guy. So long story short, the first time I ever went to his home, he had, his room, and then there was this ginormous room that I think might have been bigger than his, and it was full, floor to like eye level, wall to wall, everywhere, comic books. And I'm like, whoa. He was just
I was
showed me for the
very
first.
nervous.
He was very nervous. And I had to take it all in, right? Because I've never seen this many comic books before, not like that in someone's home. So, but it intrigued me at the same time because I'm like, okay, this must be something that's like really awesome because he's cool and he obviously has an obsession over these items.
Healthy obsession.
Right. That's what I tell my wife, too, Tony. It's fine. Yes, healthy obsession.
Like a week later, he got deployed for like a year. We run out of like random things to talk about, and so it turns into comic books. And long story short, I really got into them. Like it just seemed like super exciting. It was something that we could connect over. And like I watched the shows like Silver Surfer and X-Men as a kid. So, being able to connect all the dots and finding like the comic community and bonding over them with him, just like hit it off from there.
Yeah. Plus, she's a collector just generally. She collects a lot of other things. And so it's like probably an easy transition to go from those childhood shows to I'm already a collector of other things. Like, what all do you got? Like most of basketball cards and that,
cards, Pokemon.
Nice.
Pokemon, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For myself, I grew up in early or late 80s and 90s. So Ninja Turtles were huge for me. A lot of the Saturday morning cartoons are based off of a lot of comic books, which at the time, obviously, I didn't know that. So then you get through, like she said, X-Men and Spider-Man, which was my favorite, and Batman. And you get older, and then you're like, man, I really wish I could go back and read. And I had a comic shop at the city I was at. So I went in there and I was like, hey, man, where do I start? And I think at the time, Civil War had just ended in timeline wise, and he was like, oh, they just reset Spider-Man. We'll just start with the trade paperbacks and kind of go from there. So I started reading the trade paperbacks until I got to the single issues, hit my pull list up, and then went from there. And I was like, okay, these are really cool, but they keep referencing the Civil War, and I don't know what that is. So I get online and I was like, okay, let me first find all the Spider-Man I can find. So I did that. And I got really lucky, found a huge lot of comics from like 22, ASM 22, like I think 100 from 22 to 200, and then everything from 200 to whatever current was at the time.
Wow.
And I got it for like $600, which was, I was like, okay, I can afford
huge.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, I can afford that. And I grabbed it. And I just picked a spot and I started reading. And then I also did the same thing with Civil War, and I found every issue of Civil War with all the like little tie-ins and all the variant issues, and it was pretty cheap, so I grabbed that and I read through that whole thing. And after that, my pull list grew and grew and grew until it was too expensive.
Yeah.
And
We used to mail in too when you were younger.
oh yeah, when I was, that's right, I forgot about that. I had I got a random, like I grabbed, random comic books as a kid. Wasn't religious about it. And I grabbed a Superman or something. And there was a coupon in the back of it that was like, hey, just write into this, give us $60 and we'll send you a bunch of comics. And I was like, okay. So I did that, got some money from my mom, and she wrote me a check for the thing. And then like monthly I was getting Superman Adventures and Man of Steel.
That's
And
really cool.
I read through the Doomsday, Doomsday storyline and the death of Superman. And that was like my real uh, intro, like my main intro. It was like, okay, this is what I want to be more into.
Cool. So it wasn't really a thing for either one of you where, as a kid, like you said, you would read comic books, sometimes. Like for me, I had an uncle. His name was Tony, actually. It's the uncle that I talk about a lot on here. And he sold books at a flea market, trading cards that Sammy was talking about. Like I have a crazy trading card collection too, because I used to run around with him all the time, and that's what we did. So I read comic books for a long time as I was a kid. Then I took this break, as I like to say. I discovered girls and beer, and I took a break, right? So I started having to spend my money in other places. And then once my girls got old enough to where they didn't really, I wasn't cool anymore. Like they didn't want to hang out with me all the time. I needed something to do. And I happened to walk into a comic shop, and it was like, so it was, I immediately, jumped back into it. So you guys didn't really start necessarily when you were younger. Is that correct? As far as being hardcore into it?
No,
Oh,
yeah,
right, right.
not at all. I was more
Yeah.
into the shows and things like that. I read a little bit, but not very much.
I'd say what really got me into reading is when he was on his year deployment, he had like a mid tour where he got to come home for a few weeks. And we got an Airbnb that was close to his favorite shop that he went to a lot. Um, and he took me there, and it was their husband and wife owner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he took me to the lady and was like, take her, figure out what she wants, get her whatever she wants. So I had this stack of like, oh my gosh, like
You know
20
how it is.
trade
Like
paperbacks.
if your girl shows any interest at
Yes.
all, you're just like, you can do whatever you
Yeah.
want.
She took me around that shop and she was asking me questions like, are you into this? Are you into this? And I'd say, oh, I think I like that. And she took me to this section, was telling me about every single storyline. I was like, oh, I think I'd like that. Oh, no, it's not for me. And like, she took me around for a couple hours. We were there for a while.
Yeah, we were there for a while.
That was fun. And Saga, she really
Yeah.
recommended me to read Saga first, and I read that one first, and that really yeah, that really did it.
Cool. All right. So, question two is, now that you're kind of really into it, right? You have an online comic shop, you have all these things. Do you still read, or do you just collect, or do you just sell? Like, how does that work for you guys?
All of it.
All the above?
I would. It's definitely like a. If I broke it down by percentage, we mostly collect to sell at this point in time, just because
Mm-hmm.
this is what we want to grow as a business to be a thing when I get out of the military. So we had to make a cutoff of our PCs. Be like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
this all stuff goes to the shop, and if it meets this criteria, then we can keep it for ourselves. So I think
Yeah.
she has 2 short boxes or so of a PC, roughly.
I have 3 now, but
The
yeah.
three short boxes. I have a single short box of random PC books, like a long
Yeah.
box of a long box and a half of Ninja Turtles and Usagi, and I have like a short box of graded books that are like my PC. And then anything else, if it doesn't fall under certain criterias, then we put it to the shop so we can grow. Our reading boxes, we spend the least amount of time reading. We to a fault, like we don't want to. It's just we don't have time.
Sure.
So for the most part, we try to read to keep up with a few things, to give support to some friends, and to research things. So we'd be like, oh, I need to read this so I can know what I'm talking about in conversations. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. I'm sorry, Sammy.
Oh no, you're totally good. I would say, yeah, it's one of those things like, as I think as like a parent, it's harder to do the hobby items that you
Sure.
love the most, and then balancing parenthood, work, and because like the comic shop is like my main job, and then reading. It is hard to, like, in general, like, juggle those things. But like he was saying, like we have to be like very strict with the shop and collecting, because it's one of those things where it's like, we have like around 30,000 books in the shop, but like you really have to be disciplined to not be like, I want all of
All
that.
of it.
Right.
Does this really belong to the shop or is this mine now?
Yeah.
Well, no, that would be a problem for me. I'm not going to lie to you. Like that would be a problem for me. Is I have trouble sometimes getting rid of things. And if you don't mind me asking, you said there's a criteria, for what you keep. And I was wondering for each of you, what is that criteria? Like, what does it have to meet for it to stay in your PC?
Oh boy, for me, yours is a lot shorter of a list. So I have a really hard time. I don't think I'll ever let go of a Golden Age book right now. They're really hard to find. So for me, Golden Age, I love everything from the colors to the paper to the age of it to the fact that it even survived this long. So that is one thing for me. For the Silver Age, it has to meet like this visual appeal for me. High grade, incredible color saturation. Like I just have to look at this book and be like, okay, this is in my life and it's a part of me now forever. So that's my Silver Age criteria. Bronze Age is where a lot of the keys I love come from, like Storm, Kitty Pride, like, the X-Men characters. Those are like a lot of the characters that I really love, come from, that early Bronze Age or like Silver Surfers, like the end of the Silver Age type of thing. Those just stay with me because it's like a long-term love, where I loved them since I was a kid just watching the show. I have to have it now. Um, and then 90s, I am convinced that I will have every 90s gimmick comic in here to my life. I don't know why. Like, people always think it's hilarious how I just love vintage so much, but yet I want every single 90s gimmick comic out there. I would say,
It's really sweet for me.
yes,
Yeah, no,
Look
I
at this
love it.
gift I got you for 25 cents.
I know.
Absolutely. So easy at
It's so
Christmas.
tiny,
Yeah.
So that's my criteria is, and I love the Disney books, the OG Disney books.
I do too.
So, for me, those are my check marks, and I don't collect much modern at all, unless it's like a 90s gimmick. So, like when I see a lot of books and I'm like, oh, I like that, but I know it's not like I love that. So that's, I guess, is my difference between loving it and liking it, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much the
Emotional.
opposite of that. Whatever that is, I'm the opposite. I collect whatever I think is going to be hard to find, right? So, and that can be defined however you like it. So I have, let's go with New Mutants 98, right? First Deadpool, a super highly printed comic. So for me, it's got to be like a super high grade. So mine is a 9.8 signed by Liefeld, and I don't know how to say the other guy's name. Nietzschezia or whatever. I don't know that
Yeah,
guy.
I don't
Anyways,
even attempt to with this accent. I don't even attempt to say the names.
so it's a dual signed comic and it's in super high grade. I'm not gonna find that one just anywhere, right? Or I have the
Oh, that Supergirl one.
Legion of Superheroes,
Mhm.
Supergirl 23. Where
Hmm.
she's on that comet.
Yep.
You know that one. So I
Hmm.
got
That's
that
really
one,
nice.
and that one's dual signed with a remark on it, and super high grade. But they don't have to be always super high grade. It's just like, is that going to be? Am I going to be able to replace this easily? If it is, then I don't need it in my PC because I can just find it whenever I want. Outside of that stuff, because that's mostly what fills my graded box. My short box of raw stuff is mostly gifts from the kids or Sam, and then of course I want to collect pretty much all of the TMNT runs and Usagi runs. And Usagi is pretty hard because
Yeah.
low print
Low
runs
print
for
runs, yeah.
everything. He was in a ton of different things for a while, so it's really hard to find all those different issues. So that's kind of that's my goal, really.
Cool. No, I like that. So, all right, let's move on to question 3. And, Sammy mentioned it a little while ago. And, this is where it becomes match game instead of 10 questions. And I was interested to know, with you guys being a husband and wife team, you know, was it the comics that drew you together? So apparently, at first Sammy wasn't into it at all. Walks in, you've got this massive room. I wanted to know if it scared her. Like what did you really think when you walked in?
Yes. What did you think?
Honestly, you know those moments when you just walk into a room and you're just speechless, like you have no thoughts. And for a woman, that's a lot to say because we always have like a lot of random things that's going on in the brain. And I just walked in and I didn't know what to think. you know I also felt like I was walking into like maybe a sensitive situation for him, so I was already like hyper alert that he literally was red in the face, embarrassed, showing me, and super like nervous. And so I was taking that into account, and so all I was thinking of was like, okay, what words are coming out of my mouth right now? um but I was more so fascinated by the fact that he had so many of this item and must have, because I was thinking like I didn't know the value of comic books at the time, so I was just thinking to myself, okay, he obviously has thousands of comics in here, so even if he paid $1 for every one, he obviously spent is probably as much as his vehicle cost. So I'm just thinking like this must be something amazing, but I don't know why. So
Right.
I like asked him a lot of questions about the different things that he had around, and like I remember asking like how you had it organized, like how the heck do you know what
Alphabetical.
you're reading, and like I had no idea anything about comics like that. So I was just asking him a lot of questions, and he finally like got unnerved, and is that the right word I'm looking
Mhm.
for? Unnerved, and I think I think you gave me Bitch Planet to read. That was super good. um but yeah, that's literally how I felt. It was more of like a speechless but fascinated by it all situation. I definitely wasn't weirded out. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
more of a,
At the time, we were both single parents, so it's like have this
oh yeah,
like
we've seen weirder at
we've
the
seen
point.
way worse.
So for you, Tony, like I mean, and this is, I mean, I can kind of relate to this in a way, okay? Because when I met my wife, now my wife, we'd been dating for a little while, and I hadn't shown her like my comic books. I hadn't shown her any of my trading cards. Like I hadn't my toys, the action figures that I have that I kept as a kid. And when I first showed her, like it scared me to death because I thought I really like this girl,
Hmm.
and she's going to come in here and think I'm the biggest nerd in the world, and like who, and just leave me. Did that thought? You said you were red faced. Did that thought cross your mind?
Yeah, for sure. That's why I was red faced. I was a little
Mm-hmm.
nervous because she had shown herself at that moment to be really awesome, and it's like you don't want to lose that, but also I don't want to invest like a year of time and then be like, hey, this is my passion is this thing, and she's like, yeah, it's not whatever. Like, don't you're gonna have to get rid of that or something, and then I'm already invested. I'd rather lose it in that moment after just a short while than a long investment of time and emotions.
Yeah. Are
So
you talking about the books or me?
you the books weren't going anywhere one way or the other.
Well, okay, so after, and this is, and I'm being 100% honest. I don't normally talk about this on here, but the way that Amy reacted to it made me love her even more. Like it was one of those things where I knew almost. I was like, okay, this is real. Like she was cool about it. She does not like it at all. Like she doesn't watch she'll watch the movies with me, but she's just not into it at all. As long as
Mhm.
I'm happy, she's happy. That's how she sees it. So Sammy's reaction to it, did that, were you like, okay, all right, yeah, she's cool, but now she's cooler?
Yeah, because basically the timeline of events is we met, and like a week and a half later I left for Korea for a year. So we did not know each other nearly at all, right?
It was probably like day 3 of
It
meeting.
was
Oh
really
wow.
short time frame, and I had the expectation of going to Korea basically single, and not having any anchors in America at that point in time other than my kid. Um, so for the way she reacted in that moment, it really like hooked me. I was like, okay, because obviously I didn't know anything that was going on in her head, and none of that was on her face that she said where she was worried about how she was reacting. She was just like, had like, obviously I didn't know what was going on. My heart was racing like 1,000 beats.
Sure.
And we walk in and she's like, "Oh, what's this? Oh, tell me about this." And it's just showed interest. And I was like, "Oh, this is obviously an amazing girl. So let's give this thing a shot."
And so, Sammy, to you, as his passion for the books, like Amy has told me this, she said, my passion for it actually attracted her or to me more. She was like, the fact that you loved this so much and you were so into it and then you were open about it, because she did the same thing. She asked me 1,000 questions. Did that draw him to you? Did that hook you even more, as you saw that he had this passion for it?
I would say it definitely gave us a lot to talk about. Definitely filled the air for, I think that's the hardest part of long distance relationships, is having something to talk about,
Sure.
especially for a whole year of nothing but on the phone. So I would say the biggest thing is it gave us something to talk about, and it gave me something to learn from him. Because I think one of the struggles too, in like not going down like, the relationship chat road, but too far at least. But one of the things is like, if you have too much in common, you know what I mean? If you don't have that thing where it's like so opposite that there's just nothing there literally to talk about. Um, so that, I would say, really, I don't know, it was just like so intriguing. And like even now with comics, we learned from each other a lot because we really don't have much in common when it comes to comics. And the community think that's hilarious because it's like the person I disagree with the most in comic books is him. And he says the same about me. We
Yeah.
don't collect nothing the same. We don't even agree on many of the comic book appearances. So I think for us, that's just like so exciting, and it is a huge draw in a different way.
No, absolutely. Well, like I said, my wife and I are completely opposite. Like we don't really like anything the same. But you'll never meet two people that are more perfect for each other than me and her, and I'm sure you guys feel that same way too. All right, so that's the end of match game. We'll leave the relationship part, but that just it interests me because you guys do seem like you're happy. You're kind of doing this thing together, in the comic game, and I don't know. I just find that intriguing for some reason. So, all right, question 4. Um, you have a virtual comic shop. So I want to talk a little bit about that, like how it started and then kind of how it's evolved up until now.
Well, I'll give you the beginning because that's where I was at, and she can give you where we're at now because that's how we got there as her. And that started, like I had said earlier, my pull list got expensive. So I started pulling from my own collection, getting them graded and selling them on eBay just to fund my weekly, because I was spending like $100 to $150 a week on my pull list, which, and then obviously I couldn't even read all of them. It was ridiculous. So
Right.
anyways, I kind of rolled like that for a really long time, like 10 years is kind of what I was doing that for. And then I started making a little bit of money here and there just to, like, I don't know, pay a couple bills here, pay a couple bills there, and just fund it as I go, just to increase my PC and increase my reading and just do that kind of stuff. So that's what we did for about 10 years was that. And then Sam, when I was in Korea, was like, "Hey, you should think about moving over to Instagram because there's no fees. It's really cool." And I was like, "I don't know, social media. I still have a MySpace, like."
So for me, I've always like I've always wanted to have like some type of business. So for a long time, for a few years, I was in makeup and beauty and cosmetics and all that stuff. Totally opposite of comics, but I moved up very quickly because I was just so determined. I ended up being on like the board of this company for a while, and so I had already been doing business for a while and doing it virtually, especially because, like, at the time, like, I was a single mom. And then, with Tony, even though he was deployed, it's still kind of the same. So I was doing that for a long time. And like, Tony had expressed, like, one day, like, he would say, like, oh, probably never happened, but the dream would be, like, what if I had like a comic book shop and stuff like that. And we got talking a lot. And I was just thinking, like, because I was starting to like get into the comic community on my personal account. and nobody knows me there. I know some of the people follow me on my old one and never put two and two together. It's hilarious. So I got into kind of like seeing the comic community, and I would hop on sales randomly, like kind of like watching and like and hanging out. And I told Tony about it. I was like, people have comic book shops virtually, and like I saw people had virtual comic shop websites and stuff like that. And I know it's not realistic for military to have like a brick and mortar store because you really have to like be able to like pack up and move anywhere. So I was really trying to like encourage him with the idea of like, what if we did it like all online? And so that's how we really started this. We made the Skeleton Key comics. His dream name was Skeleton Key Comics, and like as the name. So we created the Instagram account, and now we're here like with the LLC thing, and it's been a lot of fun. I got done my old job earlier this year, which I'll tell you was really scary.
Oh, I
That
bet.
that was scary, like letting go of my old job. It was, yeah, and then fully investing, you know, my time and faith in what we're doing here. But I'm glad I did because it's been a blast and
Hmm.
focusing on the comic shop. And so I don't know if I hit all the points of the question.
No, no. I mean,
No.
I like the answer. As far as talk to me a little bit about how, like, you started out on IG, and then I know I see you guys over on Whatnot. I'm sure you're selling. Like, explain to me, like, as far as a virtual comic shop is concerned. So, do you have a website? Like, if I wanted to go to skeletonkey.com and purchase comic books, could I do that?
So we actually hired Nate. He also works for Scout Comics. We hired him. He's also a web designer. So we hired him to do our site. It's done. We have like a couple things left. Him and Tom's guy that does like the shirts and stuff. They created our shirt and everything. So here in like within a week, fingers crossed, it's really depending on me because I have to get photos of the books and all that stuff. I'm hoping by next weekend it's like finalized. But yeah, there is
That's
one.
awesome.
It's just not out. Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations. That's really cool. So you'll sell books there. Will you still continue to kind of like sell on IG? Because I think I saw where you guys have a just a specific page for that. Where you sell books and then doing the Whatnot sales. Talk a little bit about Whatnot because that seems like to be a really good way to kind of be a part of the community, be in the community, but also sell your books too. What's that experience been like for you guys?
So it's been really good. Like we decided that for Instagram because like the pre-sale stuff with Whatnot and Instagram is the exact same. I've got to go through all the books, make sure they're complete, grade them the best I can, bag and board, all that stuff. Present them at the sale, but the post-sale portion is where it really changes. So with Instagram, I'll spend, oh my gosh,
Almost
a
a week.
couple
Yeah.
days just invoicing and doing the receipts because like with our insurance you need to make sure everything's itemized with the price, the name of the book, and all that stuff. So the receipt and invoice part takes a really long time for Instagram. But on Whatnot, like all of that's already done for you immediately. So that's like the big difference for us. Now we have decided that for Instagram, like we definitely want to do like our big special occasion sales, like at least by minimum, like bi-monthly. But with the Whatnot stuff, we do it right now. We do Wednesday nights and
Saturday
Saturday
morning.
mornings. And it's been so fun because, like, for example, when Tony and I do it on Wednesday nights, we get to be our goofy selves. We hang out in the chat. We start the auction goes the bottom of the screen, the chat goes up, and we're just talking about,
I honestly forget about the auctions like half the time. I'm
and
usually
then
just chatting.
it'll come across the screen. So and so won the book. We're like, awesome. Here's the next one. Talk about the book and then hang out in the chat. And it's like such a good time.
Yeah.
Um,
The positive as well is because she does all the pre-grading and organization stuff, and then I do most stuff
mhm.
post, like packing and shipping. So as soon as that sale ends, if I want to, I'm able to like basically start packing and get it going, depending on like what shift I'm on or whatever. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So, and I can't do that with IG sales because I have to wait for her to send out all the invoices and for people to pay the invoices where
Yeah.
on Whatnots instantaneously.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Do you see, because I know a lot of people use eBay, to sell books, trading cards, all that stuff. You see a lot of that on there. Do you see Whatnot kind of maybe overtaking that somewhat, or do you think that's a big enough space, where everybody, because you got Macari, you got all these different sites now where people sell this stuff. Do you guys, I don't know, Whatnot, maybe it's just because it's the hot thing right now. I don't know, but I see that a lot. A lot of people are going to Whatnot to sell. And it seems to be, like you said, on the back end of it, the money's instantaneous. It's the packing and the shipping can be done almost instantaneous. Do you see that kind of being the future, maybe going away from Instagram to Whatnot, or do you think that'll hurt eBay as well?
I think Whatnot, it's kind of like when you say, people say the world needs CGC and CBCS. You know what I mean? I think the market needs eBay and Whatnot. And so
Yeah,
I feel like Whatnot is amazing for shops, especially during COVID, because I
Sure.
see shops before they open or after they close, like their brick and mortar will do sales before or after open close. It's amazing for people who have virtual shops because we have a lot of friends with virtual stores. And then those who are starting to like dip their toes into selling, I think it's really great. But then we also have like even a lot of customers who actually sell their PCs, like they work a lot and they might probably never have time to have a Whatnot sale because of the live portion, but they can pop their books on eBay to buy like their grail. Like, you know how some people
Sure.
are like, oh, I'm going to go from giant size X-Men 1 to X-Men 1. And so
yeah.
you see them like popping their books on eBay, doing their thing.
And
Um,
as of right now, you can't really sell an X-Men one or giant size X-Men on Whatnot. It's just, I mean, you
mhm.
can, but it's just not that realistic, to be honest. You know what
Sure.
I mean? Where I can post that on eBay for 30 days indefinitely relisting itself, and eventually someone's going to come across it
Yeah.
because they search for that, and you can't really do that right now, Whatnot. So if they get that updated and they can actually compete with a few of those type of
Like auction
utility
houses or
items,
something.
yeah, then that would, I could see them overtaking eBay in that sense. But as of right now, the way it is, they're two
Hmm.
separate kind of things with
Oh
their
yeah, they're
own
very
different
different. Yeah, yeah.
purposes.
Hmm.
Good. Thank you. So I wondered, now that you have the virtual shop, once you do get out of the military, if this thing continues to grow, would you do a brick and mortar shop, or would you stay just virtual?
I think I want to stay virtual. Obviously, like Sam said, I always wanted a brick and mortar, but I honestly don't want to deal with a pull, like having to like accrue customers to get a pull list going, to make sure that they pay for that on a weekly basis, to penny pinch constantly on your
Like
weekly
the
books that you're
overhead.
buying. The overhead is crazy from what I understand.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you're also anchored into that location. And I really, really enjoy so far the freedom of the virtual shop that we have. Like we can just pick up and
Hmm.
go whenever we want,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah,
It,
the get
I
up
think
and
I
go
think the
thing.
only thing that would be nice is to have everything centrally located outside of the house somewhere.
Right. Right. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, not in your house. Right.
Yeah.
No. All right. So, question four. We've mentioned it a couple times that Tony, you are in the military,
Hmm.
and I just wondered, I've always wondered this, like, folks that are in the military, are comic books a big thing? Like, I would think if you're deployed and if you're not doing a whole lot, maybe it's good to read and keep up with those things. But I was wondering how popular that is in the military.
I mean, I'm so isolated where I'm at. Like, I only know me and my coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I work in the air traffic control tower, so it's just like me and a crew of like 10 people. So that's the only people I see, and none of them care at all about any of it. They're super happy for how it's going for us right now.
Sure.
They're all like very, very supportive of all that, and that's really cool because you don't really always expect that to be the case either. Deployed, I've seen comic books laying about. Usually they're like stuffed in a cubby somewhere or something like that, but it's like I maybe 10 out of the, I don't know, 7 deployments I've been on or whatever it is. So they're not very common, I would say.
Cool. Thank you. That was one of those things I just always kind of wondered that, if,
Yeah, in
especially
my
reading the military.
it could be other people's experiences are different.
Yeah,
Mine, I haven't really seen it.
sure. Okay. All right. So, question 6. I always like to know, especially people who sell, like, what are your favorite ways to hunt comics? Like, of course, you can get on eBay, like you said, whatnot. There's flea markets, antique shops, cons, LCSs. Like, what are your favorite ways to go and hunt for books?
You go ahead.
All right, I say this a lot, so Tony's probably gonna laugh. But you know how women, we like to shop. There's always
Hmm.
some type of thing that women like to shop. Like growing up with my mom, for her it was purses and jewelry and hair clips and all these fun things, and we'd go shopping and she'd have a cart full of all this purses and jewelry and hair clips and all this stuff. And all my friends are the same way. They always have that thing. It's or clothes that it's like, I'm gonna go to TJ Maxx and my goal is to fill the cart. For me, it's comic books. So when I go to a comic book shop, I'll like our LCS, I can't remember. I can't think of a day I haven't filled a short box going in there. I like to binge shop comics, and it's just the things that I listed off earlier. Every single 90s comic gimmick I haven't owned in my PC, Tony or I grab,
Hmm.
Silver Age, everything. And then I always throw in extra stuff. I know the shop doesn't need more books, but like our LCS, he's so sweet, and like I know we pay his overhead every time we go in there. I just grab a bunch of extra stuff. He knows virtual shop, and he's like, "You guys are so amazing." I'm like, "I'm just gonna grab everything." Like, take the wall in the box. But the same with cons. This last con we went to, I love shopping at cons too. I know it's really expensive for them to be there. I know it's a lot of time that goes into that. And like, I really love and admire the work that they put into it. So I love binge shopping those con booths as well. And people talk about the books, where they came from, and then we chit chat. Like the last guy we went to is like, "Oh, how is it like having like the virtual shop thing?" And like we were asking him like, "How is it like at the con?" And just like creating this big stack as we shop. So um, we as far as flea markets go, not many flea markets with
Mm-mm.
comic books here. Um,
That we found, anyways. Yeah.
but there's a lot of like, I call them OG collectors, and they'll be like 60s, 70s set up at cons with like all these amazing like silver bronze age books. So I would say like local shops and cons are really where I love to like just dig in and binge shop like everything that like looks amazing.
Yeah, I would say my favorite. I don't know if you play RPG games.
No,
All right, so you understand them though at all?
I do. Yeah, no, I know what you're
Okay.
talking about.
So my comic book hunting style is same as my RPG style, where I will spend hours in a single location overturning every corner, So
Yeah,
I'll go through every box, every, comic that I want in that section, just in case there's like an Albedo 2 misplaced in Superman. I don't want
right.
this Superman. I'm just looking through just to make sure there's nothing there that wasn't supposed to be there. And I can't help myself but to double check like every comic and just make sure there's nothing there that I don't want. Um,
Mhm.
and I would say that if there's such a thing as like a dye comic book shop, that would be my favorite. I don't like going to like the big glitzy glamory ones. I like going to the ones that are like a single female should not walk into. You know what I mean?
Right,
It
right.
looks like dingy, like a little dungeons, like there's
Yeah,
barely any lights going on. Like that's where I want to hunt.
Yeah.
The wild west of comic stores.
I love
I
it.
yeah, the glitzy glamour ones are, yeah, they're not the ones that have like the goods that I
Well,
want.
they're glitzy and glam, right? They have that. They don't necessarily have. That's I found that too. It's more about the glitz and the glam for them than it is the actual content of what they're selling.
Yeah, and all,
Mhm.
all their keys are up on the walls and they're
Hmm.
they're well priced. You know what I mean? Where those other ones, they sometimes they don't know what they have back there, or they priced it 7 years ago and forgot about
Mm.
it, and they don't care.
Yeah, sure. No, I guess that leads me to the next question: is what is there one purchase like where you do buy to resell? Is there one that stands out in your mind that like we really did well there? Like a story you would tell that I found an AF-15 in the wild, and was able to get it for $100 and sold it for 10,000, whatever. Some kind of
Mhm.
story like that. Is there anything like that? Has that ever happened?
Um, I would say my Polaris books actually. Our LCS, such an amazing guy. He prides and loves underpricing his books severely, because he loves hunting for deals and he wants people to have that same feeling at his shop. So he always uses a year old price guide price guide to begin with, like, bro, and then he uses the one from a year prior. So I actually got, they're on the wall, my X-Men 49 first Polaris and my X-Men 50 second Polaris, got them for $30 each, and he gave me a discount because I had a big old stack.
Wow.
And he knew those books were what they were.
Mhm.
He was just super excited. He's like, I'm surprised that was still there. Cause like when we got there, it was near the end of the con, right? And he was like, I was waiting for someone to grab those. And I was like, yeah, I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah, right. For me, I would say that first purchase I mentioned where I bought the Spider-Man run. There's a couple here. So there was that one. There was the main shop I shopped at for a little while with a pull list. He shut down. He was kind of a DICK anyways, but so I
Mhm.
didn't really care. But he shut down, and his coworker or his underling bought him out and opened up a shop. And within a couple of months, he had to shut down because he didn't know what he was doing, I think. um I don't know. He didn't have any insurance or anything like that. He just winged it, and he didn't do good, and he failed. And I went in one day to go get my pull list from him, and it was just a massacre of comics on the ground, and everything was. I was like, what is going on? And he's like, I need to pay my rent today. I was like, I have $2,000. He's like, you can take that. And so I just filled my Xterra like to the brim and then took it home. And that, between those two purchases, that's what, when I got back from Korea, that's basically what set us up to actually sell. It's like we were just pulling crazy stuff out of there that I didn't even know existed in that, because that's
Oh,
what she
yeah.
saw when she first met me, was all of those comics that I had gotten from basically those two main sales that I had
Hmm.
picked up for
There was a lot of crazy
less
stuff in
than
that.
$3,000.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that whole thing is what really funded us to like then learn. Like we had the time to learn and not have to like scratch and claw our way up to books, because I already just randomly had all these crazy books.
Hmm. Yeah.
What an amazing story. Yeah. No, that's crazy. That's awesome. Yeah. I was trying to think. I had a thought. Oh, collections. Do you ever buy collections?
Hmm. The last collection we just picked up was 30 short boxes of all Silver Age and very early Bronze Age. So that has filled my heart. Now that collection, I will say, that's where that's where I have to like be very disciplined on that line. Is like, okay, we just got a collection of things that I love. I need to focus. This belongs to the community, not me. This
Yeah, that
belongs
was
to the shop,
our
not me.
LCS. He called our cell phones and he was like, "Hey, I got an F ton of comics
Hmm.
in.
Yeah, he's
I
like, I have way more than I can
cannot
handle.
process everything in a timely manner." He's like, "You can have all of that for this price." And we were like, "Oh my god, that's a lot of money. Like, what are we gonna do?" And we
Hmm.
were like, "All right, we think we can do it." And so we were like, "Okay, we'll do that."
Yeah.
And that's basically what we've
Hmm.
been selling on Whatnot for the last like few months now,
Yeah.
is that collection.
Because we've had so many requests about Silver and Bronze Age, because not many virtual shops are selling that. I will at the time that we had looked last, because we were mainly almost exclusively modern, because that's what we had at the
Yeah.
time. But yeah, if it's a good price, if we can handle it, because like the biggest thing we don't talk about a whole lot, but the biggest thing that I know people don't realize because they don't think about it is we have to get our books at a certain price per book. Buying books at the short box because honestly, like who was I was talking to Nerdy Girl and Rage, and we are like, calculating the time kind of like. And so for me, really I'd make more money working at McDonald's, honestly, because of the time spent, the resources, and all of that stuff combined because if it is your job, how much are you making in an hour? You know what I mean? Really, it's such a labor of love. So like when we do buy collections, it really has to be a certain price per the box because if it's too much, then you're donating your time to circulate these books, really, is what it comes down to.
No, absolutely. And that kind of leads me to question 7 because I think every collector at some time or another, like Tony mentioned, has the thought that they would like to own their own comic shop, whether that be brick or mortar or virtual. And I'm sure that there are good things about owning your own comic shop, like I said, whether it be brick or mortar or virtual. But what's a day like, for Skeleton Key Comics? Like, kind of explain, because it has to be hard work.
Oh,
It so my day, I usually, work like, let's say, an 8-hour shift at work. So I'll go say I work in the day because my shift switches pretty often. So I'll go in the morning. I'll wake up before everybody else, usually. Make some eggs. I go to work. I come home. What are you doing while I'm at work?
during the day,
Yeah, yeah.
mom and homeschool.
Yeah. So we don't do pretty much anything comic related other
Hmm.
than some DMs and comments
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. Sometimes she'll post a video, I think sometimes on YouTube, sometimes not very often. And then usually once we get home, it's a couple hours before bedtime once I get home for the kid. So usually we play with him and then so I can spend some time with him and we do clean up and get ready for bed, all that kind of stuff. Then he goes to bed. I usually read to him at night until he falls asleep, and then that's when we basically work until I go to sleep.
Hmm.
So like let's say 11 o'clock is about, I would say, average. Sometimes later, sometimes earlier, just depends on how
Yeah.
I'm feeling.
So your workday is like basically the workday starts after dinner, so like around like 8ish. So
Yeah.
that's for you for like 3 hours a day.
Yeah, because
About.
we basically get an early dinner in, and then we just work until bedtime for myself. And then, what time do you usually go to bed?
So I'll do like the community stuff, like catch up on Instagram as much as possible, help him if he needs it. Clean up stuff like that. When Tony goes to bed, I don't like to bury myself in grading until after he goes to bed because that is an antisocial situation. Many times sometimes like with the Silver Age book, sometimes I put my phone on do not disturb. So I just can't be like distracted by the dings and the all of the things that happen on that thing. So when Tony goes to bed, I'll grade comics until about 4 a.m.
Oh,
There's been a
wow.
couple times where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 5 o'clock. Tony's up for 15 minutes. He's gonna be like super shook if he sees me down here. But I'll grade from around like 11 until like 4 a.m. with something going on in the background, just like going through comics. I haven't gotten bored yet because it's one of those things I get asked that a lot if it gets boring
I would be
because
bored out of my mind.
I like go through the stories. I take pictures and share them in my Instagram stories, and everyone loves that, like sharing the inside of the books. But it's like I get to go through everything. I get to see all like the super weird. The older the book, the more weirder the men's underwear and all that weird like little like coupons and all that stuff in there. But it hasn't gotten boring yet. It hasn't gotten over like it hasn't gotten like that yet. But um yeah, for me with the books, it's like 11 to 4 every day.
Yeah, and then when I'm working, it's mostly organizing or packing.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all I usually do.
Mm.
All right, so I'm going to make this question 8, and this is I have 2 daughters. I told you, and we were kind of DMing back and forth. I have 2 daughters, and since I started the YouTube channel, it actually started because I was trying to prove something to them. That you could literally do anything. A 46-year-old guy, who loves comic books can get on YouTube and can do it, because they were talking about wanting to start a YouTube channel, and then I was like, "We'll do it," and they were like, "Well, no, we couldn't do that," and I was like, "Well, I'll show you. You can. You just got to do it." So, Sammy, this is for you. You've kind of become a name, and a force as a female in this community. And I just wanted to know, like, what is it that drives you in the hobby, to have the success that you seem to be having?
For me, it all falls back on to Tony. So he's been in the military for 18 years, and he's like a stay-at-home mom. Like he just wants to be that stay-at-home dad doing his thing with comics, and I want to see that happen. And that's really, really what I want. Is I want to like really, like, as cheesy as that term is, like, bring them home. I really want to like bring him home, like, for good. I want him to be able to retire when he wants to, which is at that 20 years, um, and live that life that he thought just wasn't a reality. Because, like, when in the beginning, when we were talking about it, like, he talked about his dream of this, but in a way of like in another life. This isn't something that would ever happen. So for me, I'm like so determined in a way of like, all right, so if I don't kill it and this business doesn't slay, as Beyonce would say, over the next 2 years, then we can't support our family with this business. Tony can't retire. He's got to sign back on, and we're
Well,
just gonna,
to clear that up, I would
or
retire.
you would just, yeah,
I would
keep
just
Find
do the
something
working.
else to
same
do.
job as a civilian.
Right.
Yeah.
Keep working air traffic. And if I don't kill it in 2 years, then that's that. And so,
I'll
you
take
want
care of
to?
him.
Okay, little man just woke up. And that would be that. So, like, in a nice way, not sounding like any type of way, but you just can't let anyone get out in your way. I just feel like I'm trying to do something that people like achieve in a decade, and I've only got 2 years left to do it. You know what I mean? So it really is easier to turn away from like the trolls or like the negativity or the things that might bring you down in a business when you're like, okay, well, that's going to totally stop me or halt me or get in my way. Like, let's get around it and keep going. And that's my attitude and motivation behind it. Is I really believe that like we can do this, you know what I mean, and like make this business happen. And so that's really been my fuel for all of it, is
Cool.
Tony, basically.
That's a great answer, and that's very sweet. And he's a very lucky man. Um, yeah, he knows. Um, every man with a good woman knows how lucky they are. And so, no, that's very cool. And this is a compliment for you, okay? And I told Danielle this, the nerdy girl. I interviewed her sometime back, and she's clearly a force as well. And I've tried to identify, because it's really hard in this community. There's not a lot of women who are as involved in the hobby as say you and she. And I've tried to identify people, and you have stood out to me as one of those people that I could use as an example to my daughters of what it takes to get out there and hustle. Like I told them about the YouTube thing, you just got to want to do it. If you want to do it, do it. You've got to have the courage to do it, and then put the work in to make it happen when you try it. So,
Yeah.
no, kudos to you, because, like I said, I think everybody knows who you guys are, because of your drive and your fortitude, to get out there and get your all's name out there. So it's very impressive, and I want to congratulate you on that. And Tony, I was telling her, if you didn't hear it, you are a lucky man.
Yes,
Um,
I heard. Thank you.
yeah, and what does that mean to you? You know, you hear her answer that question that way. I mean, what does that mean to you?
It means that I chose right.
Amen.
you know, it means that the past few years haven't been a mistake. That the future years are probably going to be full of love and ambition and fun and excitement and adventure. And I'm down for all of that. So
Love it. No, I tell people daily that I outkick my coverage in a big way. When I found Amy, I got really really lucky. So that's awesome. All right, so let's roll to question 9. And my girls want me to ask this. I'm going to ask you both, but that usually when they know that I'm interviewing a woman on the channel, they want me to ask this. So I'll start with Sammy. What female character in comic books do you most relate to?
Most relate to and love the most are almost like separate questions.
answer
Well,
them
answer
separate.
both of them.
Who do I relate to the most? Oh my gosh. I think I would still say Storm. Storm's my favorite, but I think I might relate to her the most, I think.
Who were you gonna say?
I don't know.
Oh,
I was really thinking about it really
oh,
hard.
okay.
No one specifically asked me like who do I relate to the most, but I would say Storm. I really like if there was a comic book character to look up to as a female, I feel like she is definitely up there. So I think she's number one on my list, and I feel that way because she's just so powerful and she cannot be stopped. She's not letting anyone get in her way. And that's how I feel like I carry myself through through comics and like the business and life and parenthood and stuff like that is like she is like definitely an incredible force. So I
And
love
Tony,
her.
what woman character do you relate to? No, no. No. I mean, is there a comic book character that you relate to?
I relate mostly probably to Peter Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Just we had a similar turmoil at the beginning of our lives that I was able to easily attach myself to. Um, so that definitely helped me grow as a kid and through that kind of issues. And then just like his idyllic nature was something I kind of had a lot of ideals as a kid that I wanted to grow up to be like. But I also had, I guess, a little bit of venom in me, at the same time that I didn't. I was like, man, I know I'm like this. I assume everybody has that dichotomy of good and bad in them. But I always saw Peter Parker as like the epitome of man, of what a man should be. You know what I mean? So growing up without like my father, it was like I could identify him as the man of Peter Parker, not obviously the high school, of like, oh, that's what I should um, idolize, and I should be more like him. So that's why Peter Parker was always my favorite.
Cool. All right. So, question 10, and we'll make this the softball question and wrap the interview up with it. Do you do anything else outside of the comic hobby? Do you like to travel? Do you like music? Go to the movies? Like what else do you guys do?
Oh, definitely travel. I love to travel. We've definitely had the opportunity to travel quite a bit during this year and continuing through the rest of the year. So definitely traveling.
I love traveling, but I think what I do mostly is football related. So I
That's
do
true.
fantasy football. Sam hates fantasy football just because I like during draft time. It takes so long. Like we draft for like a few weeks at a
Oh
time,
my gosh.
and so she hates it because I'll just be buried in my phone in research and like
Like,
trying to
who needs
figure
to
out
look
what.
at their phone like this? Like, what are you missing?
So I do that, and then there's intramural sports in the military. If people don't know, and so our squadron has a football team. We play
Oh,
flag
yeah, that's
football,
cool.
and so they were like, "Hey, so you want to be a coach this year?" And I was like, "All right, guys, but you know what that means? We're gonna have playbooks. We're gonna have practices. Like things are gonna go down. Like we're gonna. I'm here to win. So
In it to win it.
so yeah. So we're practicing for the first time I think tomorrow during work hours, which is pretty cool. And then,
Heck yeah.
yeah, we got a couple more weeks for our first game. I'm pretty excited to go out there and kick some butts.
Awesome. Guys, I've had the best time. I really appreciate you guys coming on and just hanging out with me for a little while. I've really enjoyed getting to know a little more about you guys. I've followed you from a distance, through social media and those things, and just been really impressed with the growth that I've seen over the past year or so. And so congratulations to you guys, and I wish you the very very best moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this was awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you so much
I
for
had a really good
having
time.
us.
Well, good. All right. So we'll wrap this up. I will, put links to all their stuff. I think they have a really nice little link tree on their YouTube channel that you can go click, and there's all kinds of different things there that you can, follow those guys on. And hopefully in a week or so, we're going to see a website for Skeleton Key Comics. So that's going to be really cool. So good deal. Yeah, but I'll link all their stuff in the description below. Go check these guys out. They're a really fun follow on Instagram because they do travel a lot, and you're going to see Sammy. She's running around with some of the big boys out there, Comic Tom and Nerdy Girl, and you're seeing her on Tom's channel. Like it's really really cool. So yeah, go check them out. And guys, as we wrap this up, I always remind you, go over to Street Level Hero LA. Use the discount code STC10. You're going to get 10% off your order, but most importantly, JPG is going to donate 25% of your overall order to the American Cancer Society for cancer research. It was something, guys, it was supposed to be like a really short-term thing. We were just going to try it out, and it just worked. And we just keep going. Like we just keep going. We've raised a lot of money for the American Cancer Society, and that's something that's touched all of us, I'm sure. So, guys, Skeleton Key Comics, what a great, great interview. I've had a blast. This has been 10 Questions.